The illusion of control may be the most comforting lie we tell ourselves. The Stoics called the act of deciding assent, the mental moment when you accept or reject an impression that enters the mind. It feels voluntary, like a spark of independence in a world governed by cause and effect. Yet the Stoics argued that this very spark arises from causes as fixed as gravity. Your thoughts, judgments, and even the urge to resist all happen according to a rational order already embedded in the cosmos. What you call choice might simply be how fate considers you. If that's the case, we must ask, what kind of universe makes this possible? For the Stoics, the universe is not chaos but order. Every event, every breath, every death unfolds according to reason, an unbroken chain of causes that the ancients called logos. Nothing happens by chance. Even suffering plays its part, ideally situated within the grand geometry of fate. The wise person, understanding this, does not resist. To resist is to oppose the universe itself. This vision feels reassuring, a universe ruled by intelligence rather than indifference. To live in accordance with nature, the Stoics taught, is to align one's will with this rational order, to accept what already exists. Freedom in this perspective is not the ability to choose but the capacity to consent. The highest virtue is agreement, to desire nothing different from what the world has already decreed. But such freedom is unusual. It requires us to accept every event as necessary and every outcome as correct. The Stoics' inner liberty begins with surrender. If everything is predetermined, then our choices are not causes but confirmations, acts through which fate fulfills itself. The will may seem autonomous, but in reality, it reflects the structure of the cosmos, repeating what was always meant to be. This makes Stoic freedom less an act of creation than of recognition. We do not create the world, we accept it. The sage's calm arises from understanding that rebellion is ignorance, that complaint is pointless. By accepting necessity, he considers himself free. There is a certain dignity in this submission. It turns helplessness into peace. The prisoner who accepts his chains, the mourner who accepts loss, the citizen who accepts injustice, all can find serenity if they believe the chain, the loss, the injustice are part of divine reason. The world stops hurting when it stops surprising. Yet beneath this serenity, something troubling lurks. If everything is already determined, then moral responsibility disappears. How can one blame cruelty or praise kindness when both stem from the same eternal logic? The murderer and the martyr are equally bound by fate. Stoicism resolves this tension by claiming that virtue is found not in outcomes, but in attitude, not in what happens, but in how one perceives it. However, such detachment risks turning morality into mere composure. Freedom, for the Stoic, exists only within. The cosmos determines, the individual simply agrees. It is a freedom without control, a sovereignty of stance. The Stoics term this wisdom, others might see it as defeat masked as enlightenment. Yet, this cosmic determinism holds a strange beauty. It envisions a universe so rational that even pain serves a purpose. However, the price of such coherence is intimacy. A world that never makes mistakes cannot love, and a person who never resists cannot truly live. The Stoic regards fate as reason, but reason without resistance is simply silence. The stillness of a world where everything has already been predetermined. Stoic freedom relies on obedience. For the Stoic, the will is not meant to command, but to consent, aligning itself so perfectly with nature that resistance becomes unthinkable. True liberty, they say, is willing what must be. The sage does not demand that the world obey him. He learns to follow the world. This obedience seems noble, almost peaceful. It spares us the pain of conflict and the bitterness of disappointment. By accepting necessity, we avoid becoming victims of circumstance. Yet beneath the elegance of this submission lies a hidden paradox. The will that submits to reason no longer acts, it simply adjusts. The human becomes an echo of the cosmic order, repeating its logic instead of shaping it. The Stoics admired this harmony, describing it as alignment with divine reason. However, what they called alignment might also be seen as abdication. To desire only what occurs is to blur the line between choice and inevitability. The will becomes so disciplined that it stops willing altogether. Stoic freedom begins to resemble stillness, the serenity of someone who no longer believes they can alter anything. Epictetus urged his students to accept events as they happen, rather than as they wish. This advice seems wise until we realize what it suggests, that the highest virtue is indistinguishable from submission. The more one perfects this compliance, the less one acts as an agent. Every revolt, every dream of change becomes folly. The Stoic finds peace by relinquishing the need to participate. Modern culture has adopted this logic, though without its metaphysical roots. We are encouraged to regulate our reactions, not the world, to adapt rather than resist. It sounds therapeutic, but it is also profoundly political. When serenity becomes the ultimate virtue, injustice becomes tolerable. The obedient mind keeps its composure while cruelty endures, because disturbance has been redefined as weakness. The Stoics believed they were freeing humanity from slavery to desire. In reality, they forged a more subtle chain, submission to necessity disguised as wisdom. The will becomes pure but hollow, capable of endurance, incapable of rebellion. It suffers nothing, accomplishes nothing, and calls this serenity. Even Marcus Aurelius, philosopher and emperor, sensed the strain. In his private writings, he pleaded for strength to accept what reason demanded, yet his words trembled with exhaustion. He could command legions but not escape the burden of obedience to fate. The will that rules the world still kneels before necessity. The Stoics' calm, then, is not triumph but truce, a peace signed with inevitability. To obey perfectly is to erase oneself. The will, once the seat of freedom, becomes the quiet servant of order. And while obedience grants stability, it also strips life of its creative pulse, the wild refusal that makes history move, the protest that reminds the universe it does not own us. Obeying the world completely might shield us from disappointment, but it also prevents the world from ever changing. The Stoics regarded acceptance as a virtue. To live in harmony with nature, they said, is to greet each event with approval, to embrace what happens as if you had chosen it. The world unfolds as it must, and the wise person's task is not to resist but to understand. However, acceptance, when taken to an extreme, can become indistinguishable from indifference. Beneath its calm exterior, something essential is muted. Initially, this discipline feels empowering. The Stoic learns to separate what depends on him from what does not, distinguishing between the internal and external, thought and fate. He gains control where control is possible, in judgment, intention, and reaction. Everything else is surrendered to necessity, but as this clarity solidifies, it leaves the soul with little to claim as its own. To accept all that happens is to concede the entire world. The Stoics' composure, often praised, isn't always peace, it is detachment. Acceptance becomes a shield against disappointment, a way to endure an unchangeable order. What starts as courage turns into a refusal to care too much. The self endures, but only by detaching from everything that once held meaning. The disguise of acceptance is delicate. It shows as wisdom, but often conceals exhaustion. When resistance has failed too frequently, the mind rebrands surrender as enlightenment. To stop struggling feels like transcendence, but it may only be despair in disguise. The Stoic smile signals to the world, I am free, when what it truly means is, I have stopped expecting anything. Even the ancient Stoics flirted with this abyss. Seneca warned that resignation could decay into sloth, and Marcus Aurelius admitted that too much acceptance risked apathy. But neither escaped the gravity of their own ideals. For if the world is governed by reason, and reason cannot err, then every protest becomes ignorance. To object is to deny the order that gives things meaning. What then remains of freedom but agreement? Modern life echoes this in subtler ways. We tell ourselves to accept things as they are, to stop resisting, to manage expectations. We reframe endurance as maturity, disengagement as insight. Our calmness turns into conformity masked as mindfulness. The more we accept, the less we imagine change. The Stoic believes he has transcended hope, but he has merely inverted it. His faith now rests in fate rather than in freedom. Acceptance is no longer an act of courage before reality. It becomes consent to inevitability. He confuses submission with serenity because he fears what rebellion might stir. There is a time for acceptance, yes, for recognizing the limits of control, but when acceptance becomes absolute, it ceases to be wisdom. It becomes complicity. A world without resistance is not peace, it is paralysis. The masquerade of acceptance masks an ancient sorrow, that to survive in a resolute world, one must forsake the desire for one's own power. The Stoic remains untroubled, but his serenity is built on absence, the silent triumph of surrender mistaken for understanding. At the core of Stoicism lies a promise that mastery over the self can surpass the tyranny of circumstance. The Stoic need not fear misfortune, betrayal, or even death, because he governs the one realm that is truly his mind. Within that inner citadel, reason rules, untouched by external storms. It presents a vision of perfect sovereignty, the dream of an unassailable soul. But mastery, pursued excessively, becomes its own illusion. The Stoic believes he has conquered himself, yet what he has conquered is not chaos, but feeling. He governs not a kingdom, but a wasteland, an orderly domain deprived of passion, conflict, and surprise. The mind may rule, but it rules over silence. The illusion of self-mastery starts with a truth. Much of our suffering arises from the additions we make to events, the judgments, expectations, and fears that distort them. By mastering thought, the Stoic aims to end unnecessary pain. However, this remedy quickly goes beyond medicine into surgery. Instead of healing, the Stoic amputates. He removes the very impulses that make life unpredictable: love, longing, indignation, and hope. The self becomes pure control, spotless and inactive. Self-mastery promises strength, but results in restraint. Every emotion must pass through the tribunal of reason. Every instinct must justify its existence. The Stoic may appear calm, but his calm depends on vigilance. To feel spontaneously would be to betray discipline. In guarding himself from disturbance, he becomes a prisoner of his own restraint. The ancients called this freedom, but it is a freedom that depletes itself. Marcus Aurelius, constantly reminding himself to think rightly, admits to a weariness with his own thoughts. The Stoic must watch every flicker of feeling, every tremor of will, lest he fall back into error. The mind, meant as ruler, becomes a tyrant, merciless, exacting, unable to rest. Even when the Stoic succeeds, what is left? If mastery involves wanting nothing, expecting nothing, and being self-sufficient, then victory is almost the same as emptiness. The Stoic has achieved peace only by removing everything that could disturb it. His serenity is complete because it excludes the world. Modern culture endorses this same illusion. We are told to regulate our reactions, optimize our emotions, and eliminate weakness. Be unbothered promotes the gospel of self-help, but a person who feels nothing cannot be truly free. They are merely insulated. Genuine mastery is not about suppression, but about integration, the ability to move with chaos, not to deny it. The Stoic dream of control blinds us to life's wild reciprocity. We are not meant to rule ourselves like empires, but to inhabit ourselves like homes, messy, alive, unfinished. The will that never wavers may be admirable, but it is not human. The illusion of self-mastery ends where vulnerability begins. To truly master oneself is to stop pretending that one must. Accepting the limits of control allows you to reconnect with the rhythm beneath composure, the trembling freedom of being moved, uncertain, and alive. The Stoics taught that desire is the root of all disturbance. To want what we cannot control is to live in chains. To free ourselves, we must learn not to desire. The path to tranquility lies in the purification of longing, until nothing external can tempt or terrify us. The sage desires only what reason permits and accepts whatever follows. In that stillness, he believes he has found freedom. But when desire fades, something vital in the human spirit also disappears. For desire is not merely a source of suffering, it is also the spark of creation, the force that connects us to the world, to love, to hope, to strive for what might yet be. all our acts driven by desire. Without them, life becomes perfect, only in the way a statue is perfect, flawless, still, cold. The Stoic distrust desire because it reveals dependence. To want is to need, and to need is to risk loss. The soul that seeks invulnerability must therefore starve itself of attachment. Yet this very discipline that protects it also isolates it. The Stoic is safe from heartbreak because he no longer truly loves, safe from despair because he no longer truly dreams. He calls this peace, but it is the peace of renunciation. The death of desire creates a peculiar void, the quiet, polished emptiness behind every Stoic smile. It is not sorrow, but absence. The Stoic feels neither joy nor despair. Both are disturbances. His serenity is absolute because it excludes passion altogether. The self becomes pure awareness without appetite, reason without reach. What remains is consciousness detached from life, as if the soul had withdrawn from the body before death. Even the great Stoics sensed this danger. Seneca admitted that reason alone could not console forever. Marcus Aurelius confessed that his own detachment left him weary. They sought divine order and resignation, but found only fatigue. Their peace was hard-won and hollow. Modern Stoicism shares this same contradiction. We praise restraint as self-control, indifference as wisdom. We call it boundaries, emotional discipline, detachment from outcome. Yet beneath these virtues often lies fear, the fear of wanting, of losing, of depending. We create our calm by reducing our capacity for wonder. Desire is perilous, yes, but it also sustains our humanity. It fuels art, love, discovery, the refusal to accept the world as it is. The Stoic who abandons desire finds serenity but loses purpose. Without yearning, freedom descends into stillness. To live without disturbance is to live without pulse. The wise may call this enlightenment, but the living call it numbness. The Stoic's perfection is not life mastered, but life refused. His freedom is the freedom of a flame after it has gone out. Perhaps true wisdom is not the death of desire, but its transformation. The ability to long without illusion, to reach without possession, to burn without consuming. Desire does not enslave us, it animates us. To feel its pull and remain open, that is the beginning of freedom. The Stoic conclusion is clear and firm. What you call freedom is simply the awareness of necessity, with reason contemplating its own movement within an ordered whole. To live according to nature is not to choose, but to awaken, to recognize inevitability and to act in harmony with it. Their project was a matter of reconciliation, not despair, a historical effort to unify determinism with ethics, to find duty within a predetermined world. You are not asked to become different, only to understand what you already are, a fragment of rational design persisting through thought.